Yeonmi Park. You've probably seen it on Joe Rogan, Andrew Schulz, and various other podcasts. She tells of her harrowing story of escaping North Korea, a tale of survival, perseverance, and hope. But what if there's more to her and that story than meets the eye? So, what is her story? Her story has been told numerous times on podcasts and at human rights events around the world. Yeonmi's story is brutal. She talks about her childhood memories in North Korea. She tells shocking stories like of how one of her neighbors reportedly had a copy of a Hollywood DVD and for that was publicly executed at a stadium in Haisan, her hometown, a place of terror. She talks of living under constant fear and oppression, of being so hungry she had to eat bugs and grass. She talks of a cold place, devoid of hope, how things in North Korea are so bleak there is no word for love. She discusses her heroic feat of how her and her family fled on foot across mountains, were forced to eat insects, buried their father in the cold hard soil, and how tragically her mother was at the hands of human traffickers and guards. How they were chastised, persecuted, and starved. And even when she managed to escape, she was forced to strip every day in front of male guards at a processing center for refugees in Mongolia. It's a tragic and harrowing tale, gut-wrenching and has been bravely told across the world, even making hardened journalists and world leaders sob when she spoke about it at the One Young World Summit in Dublin. But what if her story isn't that? What if her story is actually much bigger and all-encompassing of the current political climate? What if I said, probably controversially, that her story is one of a relentless hunger for fame, the pursuit of the grift, and to become quite willingly a pawn for conservative America to cement their base and vilify so-called woke institutions in their never-ending manufactured culture war? Yeonmi Park delivered her gut-wrenching story all over the world. But the more she told her story, the more inconsistencies were revealed. Inconsistencies that those on the right have conveniently chosen to ignore. You see, we live in a very recordable world. Everything we say online is there forever. For the innumerable pitfalls this has, the one redeemable aspect is that lies should be harder to get away with. This is where we begin to see the holes in Yeonmi's story. Back in South Korea, where she lived after escaping North Korea, she became a celebrity on a South Korean show called Now on My Way to Meet You, a panel-like show made up of primarily North Korean defectors. In the early 2010s, she was known as the Paris Hilton to North Korean defectors, as on this show, Yeonmi talked about how her mom had Chanel handbags and wore clothes imported from Japan whilst living in North Korea. One of the major glaring holes in her story concerns that execution I just spoke about. In her original account, Yeonmi talks about how her best friend's mother was executed in a stadium in Haisan in 2002. But this is contested by many North Korean defectors. Public executions were almost unheard of after 2000. And even before that, most were carried out far away from the cities at places like airports. Even the crime that her best friend's mother was accused of changes from story to story. Andrei Lankov, a professor at Kookmin University in Seoul, has spent decades interviewing defectors from North Korea, and he said that, "I am very, very skeptical whether watching a Western movie would lead to an execution. An arrest for such action is possible indeed, but still not very likely." Other defectors in South Korea report the same thing. An execution over a movie is ridiculous. Sure, they're banned, but Hollywood movies are more widespread than many in the West would like to believe. But the inconsistencies don't stop there. When a mother was asked about Yeonmi eating grass and bugs and starving to death on the Now on My Way to Meet You show, her mother said the following.
먹고 살기 어려운 얘기하면 예주 양이 저런 거 없는데? 이런 경우가 좀 있었어요.
네.
왜 그랬죠, 예주 양은 어렸을 때? 그런 걸 못 겪었나요?
근데 그 정도는 아니었고 굶지는 않았어요. 굶지는 않고.
But in the same interview, her mother goes on to say something even more damning on Yeonmi's credibility.
더 잘 알게 된 계기라고 생각해요.
그 예주양은 여기 와서 배운 것 같아요.
네,
그러니까.
자기가 어떤 때는 엄마한테 전화를 해요. 이 방송을 녹화를 하고 엄마 내가 진짜 북한 아이가 옳긴 옳은가. 다른 언니들이 하는 말이 무슨 말인지 자기는 전혀 모르겠대요. 자꾸 거짓말을 한다는 거예요.
그러니까
예.
처음에 와서 그러더라고요.
네.
Her escape is also riddled with the same inconsistencies. Remember the trek across the mountains to escape? Well, even that may not have happened. In The Diplomat, they report that, in telling of her escape from North Korea, Park often says she crossed 3 or even 4 mountains during the night to get to the border, and describes the pain she endured because her shoes had holes in them. However, Haisan, where Park was living, is right on the river that divides the two countries, and there are no mountains to cross. The death of her father is also in question. I mean, it's likely he died, but the circumstances of his death and his burial remain a mystery. This isn't helped by the inconsistencies in how his body was disposed of. In an interview with The Diplomat, she claims that fearing being caught by Chinese authorities, she buried his body alone in the cold of the night. However, she has told other reporters that because they could not carry their father, they had to cremate him, and that all the family went to the mountain to scatter the ashes together. And finally, is her detention in a Mongolian refugee processing center. She has said that during her processing, she was stripped daily, humiliated and jeered by guards. This account has been directly challenged by South Korea professors Professor Shi Eun-yu and Professor Kim Hoi-an, both of whom worked as counselors at the South Korean Processing Center for North Korean Refugees, Hanawon, for 2 and 5 years respectively. Professor Kim has stated that, in the past, the South Korean government has sent counselors over to Mongolia to help North Korean defectors in detention. So how can defectors be stripped naked every day? It would cause them more psychological distress. It's not possible, she said. Kim said that compared to other countries like Thailand and Russia, Mongolia is very supportive towards North Korean defectors, and that it is highly unlikely that defectors would have been subjected to months of stripping. So in short, the daily stripping, she said, also appeared to be fabricated. The entirety of her escape, the starving, her mountainous trek, her father's burial, and the daily strippings at the hands of Mongolian guards are all credibly contested. Now, for full transparency, Yeonmi Park has herself commented on these holes in her stories and inconsistencies. She has said that oftentimes these inconsistencies are a result of her limited English ability and that her memory is hazy due to the trauma. And whilst these are fair comments to make, there is a difference between a slight detail and a huge inconsistency. Many of these accounts were reported in Korean, her native language. Maybe some did get lost in translation, sure, but everyone knows certain things and they aren't just lost to memory. For instance, everyone knows if they grew up rich or poor. Everyone will know how they buried their father. Everyone would know if they did witness an execution in a stadium or not. Everyone would know if they stripped every day in front of guards. These aren't slight inconsistencies, they're huge events in someone's life, and the truth should be easy to tell for such momentous events in one's life. So now the question is, why lie? What is there to gain out of it? Well, for that, there's 3 very simple answers: fame, money, and propaganda. But what or who is supporting all of this? Well, that's easy. Libertarian think tanks, notably the Atlas Foundation, a group founded by British free market thinker Anthony Fisher. Inspired by Hayek's Road to Serfdom, he created a political lobbying think tank to bolster voices critical of government, welfare, socialism, and, well, any economically left-wing idea. So what's their interest in Yeonmi Park? Well, Yeonmi Park is an interesting 1 in a million find for a libertarian think tank. She's genuinely from one of the most oppressive, mysterious and closed-off societies in the world. She definitely did escape, but yet she is willing to lie point blank to millions of people. She's interested in fame. In short, she's willing to be bought. She's faced objective adversity for the pursuit of pure self-interest. She's hot, she can weave a story, and when challenged, she can evoke sympathy easily. It's a win-win for a libertarian think tank to have such a vassal to promote their ideology. She can easily draw upon stories from a traumatic past and utilize them as a stark, fearful warning to America on the path they choose if they were to embrace even a modicum of slightly left-wing ideals. Now, America is about as far right economically as you can get in a developed world, and yet the fear that anyone were to challenge the free market hegemony of the economy is still a fear that right-wing libertarians have. So what's one surefire way to keep the masses on your side? By getting a hot, young North Korean defector to weave a narrative about how bad left-wing economies are, and how awfully close America is to becoming one. Not by critiquing even slightly left-wing economic proposals like free college tuition, free healthcare, etc. No, but by warning America how they should keep voting in neoconservatives and keeping the free market well and truly alive by not letting cancel culture and the woke left take over. Think I'm joking? Well, for that I think a video may do more justice than I will say. It was precisely this video that stirred me into making this video at all, as, well, you'll see. In this video by the Heartland Institute, a self-described free market think tank, Yeonmi Park issues a dire warning to America about how, if they let the woke mob have their way, then all hell will break loose, and the North Korean regime will soon be in America's front yard.
It gets really concerning right now, living in America. There's a huge force trying to control what we can say, what we cannot say, what word is allowed, what word is not allowed. Now, at Columbia, they say, I cannot say the word white. I couldn't believe, how can you be depressed if you're American? You're free. And first, very orientation at Columbia University. The professor were telling me that all the problem that exists and that we had is because of white men, because of capitalism. So that really made me think, somehow did I time travel back to North Korean classroom? Actually, there's a meme. They say Kim Jong-un attended Columbia and perfected his ideology on hating West, and taught us in North Korea exact same narrative. I believe that. And here's another really same thing that I cannot believe was happening in America is my professors were telling me that math is a racist. And math is a construct of white men. Exact same narratives happening in the heart of America, in Manhattan, in one of the best academic institutions was happening. So that's when I realized I actually might lose this country again.
As you can see, Yeonmi Park participates in yet more political theatre. She knows full well that a North Korean regime was born out of war, a long-gone historical and societal context, in a time when communism was actually big and growing, not when, as it is now, a shell of its former self, only working when it embraces the full extent of capitalism. No, Yeonmi Park has become something quite common in the contemporary political space. She has become a grifter. Like Dave Rubin, Tim Pool, and, well, the Daily Wire as a whole, they all exist primarily for the purpose of taking the biggest checks offered to them by neoconservative and libertarian think tanks to say whatever the payer wants to espouse, without any substance or without any thought at all. Yeonmi and other grifters get their fame and wealth, and lobbying groups get their vassals to propagate their messages, is bought for, manufactured to, and churn out their propaganda of the week, be it trans teachers turning your children gay, or the left-wing mob who are cancelling free speech, when in reality none of it is true to the extent that is portrayed, a made-up phenomena that exists only in the online realm. All of it is orchestrated to keep you distracted and them and their economic ideologies intact. Ignore the rising cost of living, don't strike. That would make you an activist, and therefore a leftist, which in turn would also make you a North Korean enabler. You see, people like Yeonmi Park only cement the fundamentalists of the far left and the economic right. They solidify the division and maintain the status quo of horseshoe theory discourse online, whereby we only see the extremities of either ideology, so that middle ground becomes harder to reach. We have the economic right to point to Yeonmi Park and say, hey, look at this legitimate North Korean defector. She who lived in North Korea is saying America better be careful. Otherwise, we too will become oppressed if we let those college kids keep protesting. And then we have the tankies, as they're known as online, who are so anti-West, for good reason at times, that they will take huge liberties in their critical thinking to justify and legitimize all adversaries of the West, like North Korea, They see her standing up there comparing college campuses to North Korea, and it legitimately makes a mockery of all those who genuinely suffered, those who were actually poor in North Korea, those that genuinely died of starvation. And they pick apart the holes in her story and say, aha, I knew it was a lie. North Korea isn't that bad. It's all one big CIA psyop. Don't believe any defector. They're all CIA deep state shills. But this too is just a continuation of deluded confirmation bias, just as bad as the economic right, which Yeonmi Park and her inconsistencies all feed into. And so the more grifters and political actors like Yeonmi Park that fill our political spaces, the more theatrical it all becomes, the more of a farce of democracy we are making. The more divided we become, the more progress becomes stalled, and the more the need to blame the other side comes into effect. Yeonmi Park isn't herself someone to blame for the rot of democratic discourse. She is, though, a component of a much larger machine. Not just her, but the Tim Pools, Dave Rubins, Piers Morgans, the Fox News, the CNNs, the GB News, all of them are agents in the destruction of discourse. The only goal now is to keep everyone divided, and to keep you and me from reconciling and saying, hey, you know what? Maybe it isn't the trans guy or girl down the road, or the laid off truck driver who thinks the election's rigged, or the teacher or the anti-vax doctor. It isn't even people like Yeonmi Park. No, the ones to blame for our defunct political institutions and non-existent discourse are the very people funding political actors like Yeonmi Park. Those who use their wealth to keep their interests in power well and truly alive. In short, the financial elites who pour millions into these think tanks that operate from behind the curtain of power. Those very think tanks that prop up Yeonmi Park are the very same people who then lobby governments to keep their taxes low and your wages from ever rising. And it works. That's what Yeonmi Park proves. Masses in droves want confirmation bias. It plays into both sides. What she should serve to remind everyone is that the culture war is manufactured. It isn't based in reality. It's used to divide and funded heavily by political donors who all agree it is one big distraction whilst they pass what they want to pass. It exists online in algorithms that exist solely to keep you angry, engaged, clicking, and shelling out your data for free. In short, the problem with Yeonmi Park is that she's everywhere. She encapsulates everything sick with our society today. The hunger for fame and money at any cost, and the decline of healthy discourse. And above all else, she is symbolic of a bipartisan fairy tale, where anger creates clicks and clicks make up our distractions. Distractions that stop us ever focusing on those at the upper echelons of society, those that really pull the strings. Thank you for watching. Sorry for the short hiatus in uploading videos. I've been moving around a lot. Please check out the show notes on my website for further readings and sources for the content you just watched. If you want to support the channel, please visit my Patreon where you'll get cool little perks for each tier. And thank you again for watching.